Anti-ICE protesters in Portland, Oregon, rolling out a guillotine, clashing with police and turning the streets into a battlefield outside a migrant detention facility there. It's the latest flashpoint.
I cannot believe this is happening. I'll explain in a second. But first, this is the Portland Federal Building where federal agents and protesters have been clashing every single night for 4 months in a row now.
And what makes this even more frustrating for residents is that Portland police won't respond to noise complaints or even when assaults are witnessed.
I cannot believe this is happening. Finally, this news story has made it to the national media. I have made a million YouTube videos about this story. There are only like 4 journalists who risk their lives every day to try and get the footage and the story for me and you, and finally the hard work has paid off. So in this video, we're going to work together and react to this news story, because I know a lot of you have been following this story for a while now. We know all of the details, and let's fact check what the national news is getting right and wrong. So before we start the video, make sure to please like the video. It's the #1 way you guys are helping this channel, but it also helps others see the videos as well. And when you guys like this video, you manage to get all of these stories finally in the faces of all of the United States.
Anti-ICE protesters in Portland, Oregon, rolling out a guillotine, clashing with police and turning the streets into a battlefield outside a migrant detention facility there. It's the latest flashpoint in protests that has stretched nearly 3 months now.
First correction, it's been 4 months now. Again, we've been covering this story every single day. And I also want to point out, I typically don't make videos like this for the new viewers here. I actually know who a lot of these people even are. We know their TikToks. We go into a lot of detail. But the point of this video, once again, is just to see, what is the national news reporting? How are they reporting it? I'm really curious if they're going to get the story right.
A Democrat mayor, Keith Wilson, stands firm on keeping Portland a migrant sanctuary city. Our correspondent Dan Springer has that story for us. So Dan, are we expecting more unrest?
Every night it happens, Sandra, and this is happening just outside of an ICE facility with hundreds of Portland residents living in apartments right across the street, and Portland police will not engage out of some fear that it will be perceived as helping ICE in violation of the sanctuary law.
Okay, so here's the Portland Federal Building, and for people who are subscribed to my channel, you know that the residential building they're talking about is right across the street. However, they're missing a couple of things. There are residents in this building who keep calling 911. They're not getting any help. But there are also residents in this building who are working with the protesters. Also, if you are a journalist in the area and you call 911, you have to go to the police. They're not going to come to you if you're located in this area. Okay, so that was Cloud. One thing you have to understand, this woman right here, when she came out and she yelled at these protesters, everyone on the internet who was reacting to this thought she was a Democrat, thought she was one of the protesters. Cloud is the exact opposite. In fact, again, if you're subscribed to my channel, you know that if it wasn't for Cloud, nobody would be held accountable. So when she came out to yell at these protesters, it's been about like a month of constant loud noises, of explosions, and she had enough.
We the people need sleep!
And what makes this even more frustrating for residents is that...
And they don't explain that on this news story. They just showed some random woman screaming, but that is Cloud. She is awesome, and the journalists who work on this story, they are friends with her. They also like Cloud.
Portland police won't respond to noise complaints or even when assaults are witnessed.
Calling about the protesters. They cornered 2 women out here. They need help. They cornered them. Please send the cops.
And by the way, if you guys know right here, this is Honey Badger Mom. She is one of the journalists who helps us with this story. She made it to Fox News. I always shout out the journalists who help us out with this story because you'll see over here, Honey Badger Mom, she got punched in the head. So they really do risk their lives for this story.
Portland police have
Or I guess they didn't show it, but she did get punched in the head.
not made a single arrest since
And that guy did too.
June 18th, despite a number of
And here's another journalist who works with the channel. This is Ryan. Again, he has been assaulted too. Yeah, there's only like 5 journalists who work on this story, and they really do risk their lives. A lot of their information has been leaked. These protesters have assaulted them. It's very dangerous stuff.
assaults. A protester hit one resident with a megaphone, then a fist. Despite the injuries, no arrest. One resident sued the city to force cops to enforce the laws, and this was uncovered during discovery. One officer telling another on the police radio, quote, "If it were not ICE, we could assist directly."
This right here is why I got so involved with this story. I couldn't imagine. You live in a city or an area, you call 911, they don't show up because of this. And I cannot believe it took so long. Finally, 4 months of constant reporting. Now we have a news story actually exposing that, hey, the police are not showing up, guys.
This is a full-on abdication of police duty in a 4-block radius that impacts some of the most vulnerable Oregonians that we have. Now they've said, meh, we're just going to let violent rioters do this for 80 straight nights, and we don't care.
That was Cloud's lawyer.
Police in Portland declined an interview, but said in a statement, quote, "We take these concerns seriously. At the same time, we are committed to protecting individuals' rights to express themselves peacefully." Now, all of this is on top of 3 straight months of protests in 2020, and this rioting has really taken a toll on the city's reputation. There are so many vacancies in the city of Portland right now that it ranks next to last in good places to invest in the country, and they've lost the top 20 buildings for offices have lost 57% of their combined value.
I mean, I want to show you, these protesters have made a direct impact on a building right next to the Portland Federal Building. Check this out. This is why it's good to have all the details. So here's the Portland Federal Building, and Fox News is talking about vacancies. Right here is a school, and unfortunately, the school is having to vacate. They're having to leave. Now, they are blaming having to leave on the federal officers, how they've been deploying too much gas and munitions, and they're afraid for the safety of the kids. But here's the thing, if you've been following along, you know that a lot of the protesters will put all of their equipment, all of their stuff on the gate, and they've been creating damages to the school. So look, we are seeing a direct correlation with these protesters in the area. We have a literal school, which is so annoying. I hate that the school has to leave, but the school is leaving because of these protesters.
A couple things here. Here's the flag burning and the guillotine. We'll have our viewers take a gander at that. I'm having a hard time understanding how big of an area this is, or how many people are out there on a nightly basis. Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, so the area itself is relatively small because they are pretty much focused on this one building, but a lot of the organizing happens a few blocks away with a nearby park. But
this is absolutely true. So where you see all of the clashing going on, that's one thing, but this is actually a pretty extensive operation. On my channel, I have uncovered some TikToks. I'm not going to expose my sources, but I have a ton of TikToks that we follow to figure out what exactly is the next move, what are these protesters planning, and the journalists also have some insider information as well. But again, this is not a little isolated thing. We're talking about donors, we're talking about people coming in from other cities. This has been going on for a while now, so these protesters, they rely on these donations to continue this 24-hour process of literally sieging this building.
still, I mean, as a whole, we're talking about a relatively small amount of space, but they're doing a lot of damage there, and that's the actual problem. Any given night, there could be anything from a couple dozen to about 50, even 100. I mean,
yeah, so within the last few months, it's been super quiet. I will admit, there hasn't been like the craziest amount of action, but ever since a judge ordered that the police don't have to respond to these 911 calls, all of a sudden, everything ramped up. It got so dangerous that the journalist even told me, I don't feel safe going here, or, you know, they have to do whatever it takes to go into the area secretly so they don't get assaulted because they can't call 911, they're not going to get any help.
The more momentum that continues to build brings in more folks who aren't just living in Portland and the general Oregon area. There are folks who are coming from California and Washington State as well to help out with this organizing and this all-out assault against ICE.
And look, from the perspective of these protesters, it's like, hey, we have a bunch of young kids and some adults who are just partying and hanging out, and then every once in a while I get to fight and clash with these federal agents, and more than half of the time we don't even get arrested. Sign me up. That's pretty much what's going on here. With my investigation into the morale of this, like, how do you recruit people to join this? It's really as simple as that. I don't like Donald Trump, I hate the federal agents, and here's my opportunity to clash with them. That's really what's happening.
So the mayor's not going to cooperate. That's pretty clear. Here's what the Portland mayor said. Here's the quote. Federal administration deploys bulldozers and mass arrests by masked agents, the opposite of our outreach worker and emergency shelter strategy. Let's work together by volunteering and donating and prove the administration's heavy-handed tactics are not needed in our city. That's a no, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's more than a no. I think it's clearly rejecting any kind of interference coming from the federal government. And that's really what this problem is, because you've got two separate issues that the mayor is trying to use to generate folks on his side. On the one hand, you've got just the sanctuary policies. They want nothing to do with ICE agents. At the same time, despite all of this, they've got a homelessness crisis. And they're now claiming that the president is going to send National Guard troops into Portland to help with homelessness. And so
the part they're not talking about is that the city is not even enforcing their own encampment policy. So a lot of these protesters, if you go watch pretty much any of my videos, you'll see the encampments. They will put an encampment right in front of that school like I just showed you, and then they'll be told, hey, you got to dismantle it, you got to go away, and they'll move it 1 inch over because they have complied with the city. The city shows up again, hey, you can't be here. They'll move it right back over a couple of inches, and they've moved. So they're not talking about that here.
he's using that as a threat to generate support for a plan that continues to fail, frankly, in Portland, and is a big reason why you've got that vacancy rate that Dan Springer talked about.
Here is the deputy ICE director talking about the cities that need the help, and they're blue.
As you all know, oftentimes these Democrat-run cities are the ones who need ICE the most. And the men and women of ICE, Secretary Noem and President Trump will not be deterred by Democrat members of Congress, of governors, and of local leadership who are saying they will not work with ICE.
Now, I do want to point this out. Over in Portland, which is what I want to focus on, the mission is not only sit there and clash with the protesters. That's just what we're seeing. Outside of that, you have a broader mission where ICE is actually doing their job. Their job is not supposed to be to contain these protesters and to clash with them every single night. So this is where I think a lot of people also get confused. People will say, why isn't Tom Homan sending in more people? Why is the National Guard not coming in? Because the mission is actually going pretty good for the Trump administration outside of these protesters. So if the protesters are just clinging on to this one building, that allows for the federal agents to actually do their real jobs outside of the federal building.
We'll go into communities and we will enforce immigration law as it's written.
So Jason, can you project for us what this looks like in 3 or 6 months? Well, we had the governor of Louisiana on our program earlier on America's Newsroom. And the question came up about New Orleans. He pretty much said, he didn't say let's start this hour, but it was pretty much any day. And
as I make this video, I'm actually preparing for another video where there are already a ton of protesters starting to collapse over an ICE facility. So we are already starting to see this pushback that was promised by the mayor of Chicago. So nobody should be surprised by that. There was a call to action to quite literally push back against Trump's administration.
Whether it's New Orleans or Chicago or somewhere else, how big does this go?
If it starts in Chicago, you're going to see considerably less controversy than if it happens in Portland or Seattle. The reality is, if they were to bring any federal troops to do any kind of policing, no matter how many people might even want it, you're going to have the large contingency of these thugs who you're seeing on screen right now get violent. It will turn violent.
And that's the thing. Are you going to take all of your fresh, brand new assets? Again, there are over 100,000 plus new recruits who have signed up for ICE. Are you going to take all of these assets, send them to Portland, and know it's going to be a very violent confrontation? Or are you going to take the fresh troops? When I say troops, you know what I'm talking about, not the military, but all of the new fresh agents. Are you going to go into a zone where you know there's a really big problem, as in these deportation operations, go there without so much much of the physical attacks. And I think that's what the Trump administration is trying to weigh out, and I think that's what he's talking about here is, look, if you go to Portland, it's not worth the payoff. There are more illegal immigrants in cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, New York. So going to Portland, yeah, there are illegal immigrants here. Yeah, it's a sanctuary city, but you're going to get attacked.
And that's going to be counterproductive to the end goals of this administration. I mean, part of me wants to send them in to send the message. A lot of these people you can...
And a lot of you guys in my comments as well. We don't want violence, but a lot of people want accountability for what's been going on here.
Tell, they're dressed in black bloc. They do not want to be known. And so what the federal government should be doing is making arrests, unmasking them, and doing to them exactly what they've been doing to the criminal illegal immigrants on social media.
Which is what they have been doing recently, but for some reason, we're not seeing a lot of these arrests. I just think there's a lot of hesitation from the federal agents. They don't want to have to drag in a protester into the building and then build a case. Yeah, it's more complicated than we think.
Which is taking photos during the arrests and outing the people responsible. That could make a difference. However, they are violent, and that's the problem that will be posed to federal law enforcement agencies if they end up getting more involved than what they're currently doing. It is a different beast in the Pacific Northwest.
And that is the best point I have heard, and I'm glad he ended it with that. It is very dangerous to do these operations in Portland because these protesters, a lot of them, yeah, they're just like kids, college dropouts who don't have jobs, but understand they are motivated. They are here 24/7, and they have a judge who has pretty much ruled that 911, cops don't have to show up. So they feel very emboldened, and they don't care if they get arrested. That's the point. So we can have this fantasy in our head of like sending the National Guard, send in all these federal agents. That's probably going to work, but at the same time, people are going to get hurt. Federal agents will get hurt. We are seeing it already in a small bubble of Portland. Okay, so my final opinion. I do think they got the story generally right. They missed a few details, but within a 7-minute segment, I think they did a pretty good job. I would rate that segment at like a 7.5. I don't think they really invoked enough emotional attention to what was really going on here. I don't think they should have showed that this building at one point was not boarded up and looked like a castle. They should have shown how some protesters tried to take stop signs and shove it through the glass windows and throw rocks and leak all of the private information of these agents. There was a lot more they could have talked about, but I understand what they're trying to do is talk about Portland as a whole, but use this as the anchor point for the story. So I get it, it's TV, you only have so much time, and I probably made like over 30 plus videos on this topic already, if not more. Anyway, thank you guys so much for being here. Again, a little bit of a different video, but this is almost like a celebration for the journalists who've been working on this video. All of their hard work finally paid off. If it wasn't for them, I'm not going to take any credit, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't even know what was going on down here. In fact, I've had to start using a lot of the protesters' TikToks to figure out what's going on down here, to let you know how hard it is to get this story. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes, just so you guys know. A ton of people have also been showing up, sending me clips and say, don't tell anyone I was here, because they are afraid of their lives as well, afraid for their lives as well. So thank you guys so much for everything. Make sure to please subscribe, leave your comments down below. God bless, and we'll see you all later.